Joaquin Guzman was born on April 4, 1957, in the small rural town of La Tuna Badiraguato in the state of Sinaloa, Mexico. His parents were Emilio Guzman Bustillos and Maria Consuelo Loera Perez. The family lived in extreme poverty, with few resources, and the region was already notorious for drug production and trafficking. Guzman was the oldest of 7 siblings, and his upbringing in such a deprived environment shaped his early years and ambitions. His father was reported to be a cattle rancher, though some accounts suggest that Emilio Guzman was also involved in the cultivation of opium poppies, a crop with deep ties to the region's growing drug trade. This association with drugs at an early age laid the foundation for Joaquin's future career in narco-trafficking. Despite the harsh conditions, Guzman's mother was said to be a devout Catholic who attempted to instill traditional values in her children. However, economic pressures and the allure of quick money would soon prove too tempting for the young Joaquin. From a young age, Guzman was exposed to the illegal activities that would later define his life. In Sinaloa, a region with a long history of marijuana and opium poppy cultivation, drug trafficking was a part of everyday life. Children growing up in the region often saw drug traffickers as local heroes, men who had risen from poverty to riches through their involvement in the drug trade. This environment, combined with the economic hardships of his family, played a crucial role in shaping Guzman's early ambitions. Guzman's early years were marked by poverty and a lack of formal education. As a child, he worked alongside his father in the fields, cultivating marijuana and opium poppies. It was here that he learned the basics of the drug trade, from cultivation to distribution. His formal education was limited, and by the time he was a teenager, he had dropped out of school entirely. Instead, he turned his attention to the world of organized crime, seeking to escape the poverty that had defined his childhood. Guzman was known to be ambitious from a young age. While other children in the region were content to live the same lives as their parents, working as laborers or small-time farmers, Guzman sought something more. He was determined to rise above his circumstances, and he soon found a mentor in one of Mexico's most notorious drug lords, Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, also known as El Padrino. Felix Gallardo was the head of the Guadalajara cartel, and under his tutelage, Guzman began to climb the ranks of the drug trade. Guzman's first foray into serious criminal activity came when he was still a teenager. Like many young men in the Sinaloa region, he began by working as a drug smuggler, transporting small amounts of marijuana across the border into the United States. The money from these early smuggling operations was modest, but it was far more than what he could have earned from legal work in his hometown. By the late 1970s, Guzman had graduated from smuggling small quantities of marijuana to overseeing entire trafficking operations. His rise in the ranks of the drug trade was facilitated by his ruthless nature and keen understanding of logistics. Guzman was known for his efficiency and willingness to use extreme violence to achieve his goals. It wasn't long before he caught the attention of the major players in the Mexican drug trade, including Felix Gallardo. Under the guidance of Felix Gallardo, Guzman began to diversify his criminal activities. He was soon involved in the trafficking of cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamines, in addition to marijuana. Guzman's reputation as a reliable and ruthless trafficker grew, and he was entrusted with larger and more lucrative operations. Felix Gallardo's arrest in 1989 marked a significant turning point in the Mexican drug trade. His arrest left a power vacuum, and the once united Guadalajara cartel began to fracture into smaller, more competitive organizations. Guzman, who had been a trusted lieutenant in the cartel, saw this as an opportunity to seize power. Along with his associates, Ismael El Mayo Zambada and Hector El Güero Palma, Guzman formed the Sinaloa cartel, which would soon become one of the most powerful drug trafficking organizations in the world. Guzman's rise to power was marked by a series of brutal turf wars with rival cartels, including the Tijuana cartel, led by the Arellano Felix brothers. These conflicts resulted in widespread violence across Mexico, with thousands of people losing their lives as the cartels fought for control of key trafficking routes. Guzman, however, proved to be a shrewd strategist, using a combination of violence, bribery, and alliances to consolidate his power. One of the key factors in Guzman's success was his innovative approach to smuggling drugs across the US-Mexico border. While other cartels relied on traditional methods, such as concealing drugs in vehicles or sending them across the border with human mules, Guzman pioneered the use of tunnels. These underground passages allowed the Sinaloa cartel to move massive quantities of drugs into the United States undetected. The tunnels, which were often equipped with lighting, ventilation, and rail systems, were a testament to Guzman's logistical genius and his willingness to invest heavily in his operations. By the early 2000s, the Sinaloa cartel had established itself as the dominant force in the global drug trade. Guzman controlled an empire that stretched from South America to Europe and Asia. His cartel was responsible for the production and distribution of vast quantities of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamines, and marijuana, making him one of the richest and most powerful men in the world. One of the defining aspects of Joaquin Guzman's criminal career was his extraordinary ability to evade capture and, once captured, escape from some of the most secure prisons in Mexico. His first major arrest occurred in 1993, when he was captured in Guatemala and extradited to Mexico. Guzman was sentenced to 20 years in prison on drug trafficking charges and incarcerated in the high-security Puente Grande prison, located near Guadalajara. However, in 2001, Guzman pulled off an audacious escape that would become the stuff of legend. Guzman's first prison break is often cited as a prime example of the corruption that has plagued Mexico's criminal justice system. It was widely reported that Guzman used his vast wealth to bribe prison officials, allowing him to live a life of relative comfort behind bars. Over time, Guzman built relationships with prison staff, offering them large sums of money in exchange for their cooperation. On January 19, 2001, Guzman escaped from Puente Grande in a laundry cart with the assistance of several prison guards who had been bribed to look the other way. Guzman's escape from Puente Grande marked the beginning of more than a decade of freedom, during which time he continued to expand the operations of the Sinaloa cartel. Despite several near misses, Mexican authorities were unable to recapture him, and Guzman became one of the most wanted men in the world. His ability to evade capture earned him a mythical status, with many Mexicans viewing him as a Robin Hood-like figure who defied the government and the authorities. However, Guzman's luck would eventually run out. In February 2014, after years of intense pursuit, Mexican authorities finally tracked him down to a condominium in Mazatlan, Sinaloa. Guzman was captured without incident and was once again sent to prison, this time to the maximum security Altiplano facility. However, his imprisonment was short-lived. On July 11, 2015, Guzman pulled off another remarkable escape, this time through a 1.5-kilometer tunnel that had been dug underneath his prison cell. The tunnel, equipped with lights, ventilation, and a motorcycle mounted on tracks, allowed Guzman to escape unnoticed. The tunnel escape was a major embarrassment for the Mexican government and demonstrated the extent of Guzman's power and influence. The escape was meticulously planned, and it was clear that Guzman had help from the inside. Once again, Guzman disappeared into the Mexican countryside, evading capture for several months while continuing to run the Sinaloa cartel. Joaquin Guzman's second escape from prison in 2015 triggered an international manhunt with Mexican authorities, along with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, working tirelessly to recapture him. The pressure on Guzman was immense, and it became increasingly difficult for him to evade capture. After months of pursuit, Guzman was finally tracked down in January 2016 to a house in Los Mochis, Sinaloa. Mexican Marines stormed the house, and after a brief shootout, Guzman was captured. This time, Mexican authorities were determined to ensure that Guzman would not escape again. He was immediately sent back to Altiplano, the same prison from which he had escaped the previous year. In 2017, after intense pressure from the United States, Guzman was extradited to the US to face charges related to drug trafficking, money laundering, and organized crime. His trial in New York was one of the most high-profile criminal cases in recent memory. During the trial, which lasted from November 2018 to February 2019, Guzman was accused of being the leader of the Sinaloa cartel and of overseeing a criminal enterprise responsible for smuggling billions of dollars worth of drugs into the United States. In February 2019, Joaquin Guzman was found guilty on all charges. In July 2019, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 30 years. Guzman is currently serving his sentence at the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, ADX, in Florence, Colorado. Known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, ADX is one of the most secure prisons in the United States, housing some of the most dangerous criminals in the country. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman's life is a testament to the intersection of poverty, ambition, and the global drug trade. Rising from humble beginnings in the rural mountains of Sinaloa, Guzman built an empire that spanned continents and amassed billions of dollars. His story is one of audacity, violence, and extraordinary success in one of the world's most dangerous and illicit industries. Yet, Guzman's success came at a terrible cost. The violence and suffering caused by his cartel have left an indelible mark on Mexico and the United States. As Guzman serves out his life sentence in the ADX prison, his legacy continues to reverberate across the world. For some, he will always be remembered as a hero of the people, a man who defied the government and provided for his community. For others, he will remain one of the most dangerous criminals of the modern era, a symbol of the destruction wrought by the global drug trade. In the end, Joaquin Guzman's story is one of contradictions. A man who wielded both power and violence, who inspired both fear and admiration, and whose rise and fall will continue to fascinate and haunt those affected by his reign for generations to come.